Hello, and welcome back to the Cinema Scoop podcast with Sam and Jordan. And today we're going to be talking about basketball movies. Sam has started a very large basketball movie bracket, kind of in the spirit of March Madness, and also just because he's a huge basketball fan, and we both are, but he definitely is more than I am.
Yeah, it's kind of a self-imposed project I've placed on myself to churn through a lot of these movies, because when you think basketball movies, there's definitely like 5 to 10 that most people have heard of or have seen and like. And I was trying to design this to kind of mimic the college basketball March Madness, where there's 68 teams. And it took me a while to compile it, but I did find 68 unique basketball movies. Most of them I have not seen, so I've kind of started the process of watching some of these, and I've kind of designed an overall bracket that we're going to try to post on a potential website soon. But ultimately, I just wanted to give an overview of what I'm doing. And then this is going to be kind of like a mini series where I'm primarily watching these movies, but Jordan's going to watch some of them with me, and then we'll talk about them as we go along. But what I'm going to do in this episode is talk about what's kind of known in the college basketball world as the first four matchups, which are usually the worst teams before they get into the tournament. So I'm going to be talking about 8 movies in this episode, and basically I'm pitting them against each other, and the movies I think are better in some aspects and the opposite movie will advance. And I have 4 regions. I have a documentary and inspirational region. I have a culturally iconic region. I have a coaches and comedy region, and then the last region is kind of drama and the leftovers that don't really match up with the first 3. But for these 8 movies I'm going to talk about briefly today, I've sectioned these off into 4 Disney Channel original movies, or DCOM, the DCOM quadrant, if you will. And then I have 2 Harlem Globetrotter movies that were written by the same person, but
What?
directed and starring different people. I'll get to that in a moment. And the final matchup is 2 family-esque movies from the late 90s, early 2000s, where it's completely opposite subject matter, but funny enough, the main kid actor is the same in both movies, and it's the only 2 movies he's acted in. So I will get to that. But do you have any questions before we begin? I know it's a lot to take in, and I'm a visual person, so hopefully if you look at my Letterboxd list, or if we can create
I'll link it in the description, the list of like all 68. You won't be able to see the bracket until we post it online somewhere, but no, I was just going to say, I have like a very shallow understanding of basketball and basketball movies. I'm just kind of like there for the food and there for the fun. So as far as basketball movies go, I've technically seen 10% of the 68 films. And if you were to ask me like what my favorite basketball movie is on this list, I think technically speaking, like if you look at the ones that I've actually seen, let me filter for that.
Yeah, like I said, it was interesting compiling this list, because pretty much before 1980, 1990, there was really not that many basketball movies. It was really not until the 90s and 2000s when they just started making a lot of them, and most of them are bad or mid at best. So, usually when you rank and place 68 things and you're trying to like seed them and be like, this one's a number 1 seed, this one's a number 2 seed, like this is kind of like 80% of these are average or bad. So I'm trying to like sift through them to be like, is it better than this one or is it better than this one? So it's kind of, it'll be interesting to go through it. But what's your favorite ones?
I technically have seen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've seen 7 of the 68. And like it's showing me your ratings right now, but my personal favorite so far is Space Jam, but I think that's more just like because I saw it as a kid, and it's not a very good movie, but like it is iconic, and it's insane that movie happened in the time that it did. And like I think I told you this story, but like I remember having this like maybe it was the cassette or something like for the music, and I just remember like dancing with my cousin to like the Space Jam like theme song and Fly Like an Eagle until like my ribs hurt. Like I just remember dancing, and like I had to have been 3 at that time. But like if you were to ask me what my favorite movie is, like as an adult out of these, again, so far I've only seen a few, but I would say BASEketball.
Yeah, we watched BASEketball recently, Jordan for the first time, and we'll get more into that because that one is, spoiler alert, that's the number 1 seed in the comedy and coaches region. But yeah, BASEketball is awesome, and it was like a fringe ad because it's technically probably 75% baseball, 25% basketball, but
it counts.
It has to count.
It totally counts.
But we'll talk more about that one when we do that region eventually. But the ones I wanted to talk about today, so we'll talk about the Disney Channel original movies first. So there was 4 that I picked. So we have The Luck of the Irish, Full Court Miracle, and then I did High School Musical and Double Teamed are the other ones. And technically High School Musical, it could be like a whole discussion because there's 3 movies and it's obviously not completely centered around basketball, but because of just the time it came out, it was like the clearly most popular Disney Channel movie ever, especially with the stars involved. And you know, it's obviously a musical, but they do play basketball, and that's kind of part of it. And then
is iconic. Like, I really want to re-see that.
So I had that one going against this Double Teamed movie, which is based off these girl twins who, spoiler alert, play basketball and are pretty good. And it's kind of like their journey to eventually, I think they eventually get to the WNBA, but it's pretty bad because there's what you'll find in a lot of basketball movies is, number one, how much actual basketball is being played in the movies, because there's some of these movies where it's like 5 to 10 minutes of basketball and that's it, and the rest of the movie is family drama or whatever else. But it's also how they play basketball, because some of them, they'll just like do these quick edits and you'll see someone shoot and then it's a different camera angle. And the really bad ones will do this thing where the player will shoot on the right side of the court and then there'll be a quick edit, and the next thing you see is the ball's flying in from the left side of the court into the basket. So it doesn't make any sense. This movie, Double Teamed, there's like a sequence at the end where there's like a few seconds remaining, and like when you're out there playing actual basketball and you have like 10 seconds to make a decision of pass or shoot, like it goes much quicker than you think. But in this movie, it's in slow motion, and this girl like fake dribbles 5 times without like even moving her feet. And like within the time of the actual movie, there's no way it would take as little as 5 seconds or however long it is. And then not only does she do that, she then pump fakes and then passes it to another person and then they shoot it. So it's like stuff like that I have to like critique it harshly, because at the end of the day, it's a basketball movie, and if you can't get the basketball at least technically right, it makes it not as good in my opinion. So even though High School Musical has its qualms, I have to say it's better than Double Team. So We will talk about High School Musical more later in the next region, but Double Teamed is going to be eliminated. And then for the other matchup, The Luck of the Irish and Full Court Miracle.
I finally saw The Luck of the Irish. I don't know how I had never fully seen it before.
Yeah, this one is really, it's actually pretty funny. Like,
yeah.
So it's about this guy who is trying to figure out his cultural heritage, and his mom is very secretive, and his dad just says he's from Cleveland, and then it turns out his mom's a leprechaun, and he has the leprechaun curse, but if you have your lucky coin, you get to look like a human, and then there's this subplot of his coin gets stolen, and he turns into a leprechaun. It's really funny, but then the basketball part, like, he's in high school, and because he has his lucky coin, he makes pretty much every shot, and he's the best basketball player, and then when he loses his coin, he sucks, and he gets shorter. And then the climax of the movie, he's trying to win his coin back against the evil leprechaun dude, and they do some different old Celtic sports, which is pretty fun. And then ultimately the basketball sequence is at least interesting enough because he's playing high school kids, but it's like in a different realm. Like, you see visually he's actually playing the older men leprechaun dudes, even though in the actual reality they're playing the high school kids. So it's actually interesting. But then for Full Court Miracle, it's like a Jewish school where, they're like middle school age. They're much younger than Luck of the Irish. And they basically suck and need a new coach. And the main kid finds this guy playing basketball and basically gets him to coach the team. And from what I remember watching that one as a kid, and the title says Full Court Miracle, so you're like, oh, he makes like a full court shot at the end. And then I rewatched it, and it's like, no, at the very end, he passes it to his teammate, who does like this 10-foot hook shot at the buzzer to win the last game. So it was kind of anticlimactic, and it wasn't like the basis or the basic plot of that Full Court Miracle movie is that they're trying to win this tournament and win games, and so the basketball part of it, they kind of lost me at the end. But it was ultimately like these 4 movies from Disney Channel, like, they're kids movies, right? So there's a certain level of quality to them, but ultimately I think the funny parts of Luck of the Irish make it better than Full Court Miracle. So I have The Luck of the Irish advancing to the next round.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last 2 matchups I'll talk about in this episode. So the Harlem Globetrotters, they're kind of like a famous team where they do lots of funny tricks and unique moves, and they have this like whistling theme song, and they wear the red and white and blue striped shorts. And so I was looking at some older movies because I didn't want all these, because like I said, most of these are like from the 2000s and on, or from the 90s. So I was trying to find more basketball movies from like earlier than that. So there's this one screenwriter, and this is very interesting to me. Like, his name is Alfred Palka. He's only written 2 movies. He was also a producer. So he wrote this movie called The Harlem Globetrotters, 1951, and it's kind of like a documentary where they have an actor playing the coach and a no-name actor playing it's like they actually had the real Harlem Globetrotters in this movie, and I couldn't tell if the main guy was a Harlem Globetrotter or if he was like an actor becoming a Harlem Globetrotter, but he had like a girlfriend and like some family drama, but ultimately was a college kid, and he was foregoing his degree to earn extra money to be a professional basketball player. And it's not that good. Like, it's just a lot of montages of old Harlem Globetrotter footage. But then this other movie called Go Man Go came out 3 years later, 1954. And this one has Sidney Poitier, the famous actor, as the main Harlem Globetrotter guy, but a different character name. But this one, Go Man Go, didn't have any actual Harlem Globetrotters, but it still had that same, like, canned footage of old, like, actual games that they would montage and not really have any sort of, like, narration or announcers until the very end. And so, like, the Go Man Go movie, I would say, is a little bit worse, even though it has Sidney Poitier, because there was, like, some actual, like, bad editing parts where, like, he was sipping coffee and talking to this lady, and then it cut away, and then he didn't have the coffee anymore. Oh, no. And then the whole time, like, Sidney Poitier doesn't even actually play basketball. He's just on the bench.
Oh,
and then, like, it's weird because, like, they'll show you archival footage of the Harlem Globetrotters playing basketball, and then there's, like, a second shot of the bench with the coach and Sidney Poitier, like, almost, like, at a different place than it was filmed. So it's kind of like...
poor continuity.
Yeah, bad continuity, bad, like, overall production environment, because it was confusing as to, like, again, like, if you're only going to show archival footage of basketball, it's kind of not going to do you well. And then, like, the first one had the actual Harlem Globetrotters in the movie, but Go Man Go did not. So it was like, I was confused as to why they would make this first movie and then make another movie 3 years later. But ultimately, I just decided the Harlem Globetrotters 1951 was a little bit better. And then my final matchup, we have this movie from 1998 called Big and Hairy.
Which sounds like a pornographic film.
But then there's a 2000 film called The Basket. And I kind of watched these not knowing how good or bad they would really be. And then I watched them and I was like, oh, they're really bad. But then also this kid actor, Robert Burke, plays the main boy in both movies, which I found fascinating because I had no idea. And I was watching the second movie and I was like, that looks like the same exact kid as the first one. And then I looked it up and it was. But so this Big and Hairy movie is basically this kid plays basketball. He's bad. He's like on the bench. He misses 2 big free throws. And then he basically gets bullied for not being good. His dad is played by Richard Thomas, who's from the 1990 version of It, and from the Waltons TV show as John Boy. He's unhinged in this movie. He's like one of those crunchy, like, mystical parents where he's like overly supportive of his kid playing basketball, but doesn't know one thing about basketball and is not like an overbearing athletic father who wants his kid to succeed at basketball. He's just like, my son likes basketball. Hooray. Here's an eyeball basketball. And they named their son Picasso. So that just goes to show you their basketball acumen. So the twist in this movie is the kid sucks at basketball and he goes to his coach's house for like Christmas.
Which, like, is weird.
Yeah, because he goes by himself, not with his parents. He just walks over to his coach's house, and his coach has his wife there. But they're, like, talking for, like, 10 seconds, and then all of a sudden there's, like, this rumbling above them, like, in their second story in the house. And they're like, what is that? Is it a burglar? And they walk by the window, and all of a sudden this Sasquatch falls off their roof. And it's one of the... It's, like... It's a kid's movie, right? So it's not supposed to be scary, but this Sasquatch looks scary. Like, the face mask they use is, like, a doll-like looking creepy mask, so it's not family-friendly at all. I was expecting, like, a Harry and the Hendersons type look, but it's very creepy in this movie. And basically, he's big and hairy, so, like, he can play basketball, I guess, and he dominates, and ultimately they win the big game or whatever, but I was hoping that it was better than what it ended up being because it's a Sasquatch. It's almost like Air Bud mixed with Harry and the Hendersons, but it just was really bad. And so then I watched this movie called The Basket, which is set in the early 1900s when basketball was basically just invented. And it stars Peter Coyote and Karen Allen, although Karen Allen is barely in the movie. She's the love interest in Raiders of the Lost Ark. And basically it's set in Washington State in the Northwest, and this Peter Coyote guy is a teacher from Boston, and he was apparently one of the very first students of Dr. James Naismith, who invented basketball. And so he wants to teach kids how to play, but he's also a gambler and is bet money on basketball games and try to swindle people out of money. But yeah, this one's a little bit better than Big and Hairy. It's ultimately funnier because early age basketball, when there's no backboard and they're actually using a peach basket and they're actually using a leather ball, and they don't dribble and they're playing in the dirt outside and they're just underhand tossing it completely off the mark and not even close. It's actually really funny. And then ultimately this Robert Burke kid is a German immigrant, and this is set in the backdrop of World War I. And he's kind of a refugee with his sister, and he gets made fun of. And they don't want him to play because he's German. And in this movie, his name is Helmut. So this kid played Picasso and Helmut in back-to-back basketball movies at ages probably 10 and 12, and then he never acted again.
Basketball flop movies.
Yeah, just an interesting wrinkle in cinematic history. But ultimately, they play this game. They're trying... So a lot of these movies are oh, we're in high school and we're trying to win the state tournament, or we're trying to win this tournament that's made up. This movie, they're we're trying to beat the one professional basketball team in Washington at the time called the Spokane Spartans, I think it is. And if we beat them, we get $500, and so it just so happens to cost $500 for a down payment on this new farming equipment that the community needs to farm in the 1900s. So they recruit their sons to play basketball against these grown men, and they suck. And they get to halftime, they're down. Another part of these movies that I find funny is you learn a lot about the quality of the basketball movie based on what the actual score of the game is. And so you'll see some of these high school games be 55 to 53, which is kind of low scoring. I kid you not, the Big and Hairy movie was 30 something to 20 something at the end. I was they're not scoring at all.
Basketball game. If you think that's what the
low scoring college is 40, 50, 60 points. NBA is obviously they're now averaging 120, 130 at this point, and this is with a lot of 3-pointers. But so this basket movie set in the 1900s, it's literally, I think it was 20 to 6 at halftime. They were down 14 at halftime. And so Peter Coyote's okay, now I'm going to sub myself in and play and kind of swindle these guys out of money. And then Robert Burke, playing Helmut, the German kid, walks up and is I want to shoot. I can shoot better than all these other guys. Let me in. And so he puts this kid in, and he makes all these shots. And ultimately it gets to be 20 to 19 or 22. It's a 1-point game, and there's 10 seconds left. And this was before the digital clock or the scoreboard in the stadium. And so it's literally a referee's okay, we have 10 seconds and I'm going to count it down. And so this German kid has the ball and he's about to shoot for the win. And all of a sudden off the court, there's this little kid who has a seizure and falls off the balcony, and he stops. This Helmut kid stops playing and tries to save this little kid younger than him who's falling off a balcony seizing, and he catches him, and the little kid ends up being okay, but then the timer runs out on the clock, and the they lose by 1 point. And they don't really talk about it. They're just like, oh, is this little kid okay? And then the next scene is Peter Coyote with a stack of money. And he's like, always take the points, because he bet, he didn't bet them to win. He bet them to cover. And so even though they only lost by a point. So he won the bet. So even though all these other farmer dads weren't able to get their $500 to buy new equipment to farm, Peter Coyote was able to get his money back. And that's kind of the end of the movie. So I really laughed at that part, because I was like, oh, they lost and they weren't really that sad about it. And then there's just a scene with Peter Coyote's like, we beat the spread, always bet the points. It was like gambling 101. It was so funny. So ultimately I have the basket beating Big and Hairy. So to recap, we have The Luck of the Irish, High School Musical, The Harlem Globetrotters, and The Basket advancing. And yeah, so this is basically part 1. I'm going to try to do 4 more parts, 1 for each region. And I'm going to try to do this before the NBA Finals in a few months. It's just going to take me a while to go through all these movies. But I am ultimately excited to watch some of these other ones. There's a few I've seen that I'll talk about later in different episodes, but those were the ones I want to talk about today. And I'm hopeful that I shed some light on this very niche genre of really bad basketball movies that will fit into a 68 movie bracket.
Got a lot of basketball movies to watch.
So what are your thoughts? What are some of these that you're looking forward to watching? Like, you don't have to go through too many of them because there's a lot, but
well, I haven't seen Hoop Dreams, so that's on my watch list. Let's see. I like I said, I want to re-see High School Musical. I want to see for the first time Love and Basketball. This one, the first Slam Dunk, looks really good. I'm surprised I haven't seen Basketball Diaries yet, just because I went with Leo. Yeah, just because I went through a Leonardo DiCaprio like watch along phase when I was like in my late teens, where I was like trying to see everything that he was in, and I just somehow hadn't seen that one. But I've heard it's like depressing, so I would like to re-see Air Bud, because I haven't seen that in like a million years. I
was hoping Grace would want to watch Air Bud with us.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do some convincing.
I'm gonna have to see Why Men Can't Jump, because I haven't seen that before. And yeah, that's most of what I'm looking forward to seeing. Re-seeing Space Jam, the original one. I don't know if I want to see this new one.
The LeBron James one.
Yeah, I don't know if I can do that.
Yeah, there's going to be some, like, there's also, like, the White Men Can't Jump remake. So I'm going to have some, like, interesting matchups where I'm going to do, like, Space Jam versus Space Jam, White Men Can't Jump versus the remake. But yeah, I will wish me luck on this. I will try to churn these out, and this might be the last episode of this mini-series. I might call it quits, but I'm going to try to do it. So wish me luck.
Good luck.
All right. We'll talk to y'all next time.
Bye.